medications because I guess the heart grows bigger than their
Okay,
chest.
we are live. Welcome to the June 21st, 2022 meeting of the County Facilities Committee. We will begin this morning's meeting with the airport agenda, but first of all, first order of business will be to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting. Supervisor Conover, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? Being none, call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you. In the airport, we have no action agenda, or new business items. We'll move down to discussion items. And I will let our airport manager, Mr. Mapp, take over there, or Superintendent, Mr. Hajos.
Actually, I do believe we have an action
I
item.
do have an action on
Yeah.
that.
What-
Request to authorizing appropriation of funds amending the budget for the court settlement. I know, it's not a big one.
Well, it is if I don't have it.
It is a big one.
Oh, thank you. All right, sorry about that. I apologize. So,
It's all right. I just thought you were gonna overpass it. I'm like, woo.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, we have request authorizing appropriation of funds and amending the budget for court settlement. Rationale, have the funding in place for pending court settlement for Forest Enterprises.
Bring it to the floor.
Okay, Supervisor McGowan, a second. Supervisor Conover. Discussion. Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is this? Do we know of the, and I'm not putting you on the spot here,
Oh, go ahead.
maybe someone else knows, what the total is? The total of your payments to Forest Enterprises now for this
Total of
property
all
that we don't
payments,
need?
Not just this one.
Yeah, all the payments.
I would defer to Mr. Terwilliger. He may or may not know.
I would have to add up and do the number crunching here. I know the latest, this last payment is $179,388.30. Have to add up the numbers on the previous one here and can do that. I do it the old fashioned.
I don't need are we talking 800,000?
It was approximately, and this is just a ballpark, if I can answer.
Sure, go ahead.
Approximately 697, 700,000.
700,000. All right, thank you very much.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I mean, this is the process when you take property. It's part of the process, and the goal of the process is to ensure that the property owner is properly compensated.
Sure.
But there isn't anything more important for an airport in its future than the protection of flight paths and air installation compatible use zone areas. And you don't have to believe me, you can search it on the internet. Just type in airports, flight paths, and the belonging pages. And we didn't just get into this because we thought it was a good idea. It was something that was approved by the FAA in terms of the acquisitions that we were involved with.
Correct.
They were the primary metric on this, and a big percentage of it, they actually paid for it. They actually paid for it. They're not paying for these final steps, but so we did receive a fairly significant percentage from the FAA for these acquisitions, and I think, and then not too distant future, I think that they'll look back on this and say, wasn't that a smart thing to do?
But I would add to that, that this amount here is court ordered. I mean, there's really not much wiggle room, if you will, or negotiating room. I mean, you could send it back and it'd probably end up in the same judge's hands. And I don't know that that would bode well for us. So it is something that the county has to do, right? And the superintendent Hages.
Yeah, I'll just add on that the court settlement is half of what was the original request.
Right.
The court looked at it, they were looking for appraisal fees, attorney fees, and some other associated fees with it. And
Right.
all said and done in the court, they awarded him only half of all those fees. He was, for the property value itself, he was looking somewhere in the vicinity of 2.8 million, and with probably three different appraisals, it never came to that amount of money for the appraisals for that piece of property.
Right.
But I kind of did this ahead of the schedule because we knew that the court order is going to come soon, and within 30 days of the court order, Forest Enterprises must be paid, and that's based on the court order. So I'm going to get the money in place sooner than later to make sure that we were abiding by the court.
And again, I would add that if this goes back, if we were to take this back, the judge that decided that 50% was adequate went to him again, he just might say, yeah, you know, I was wrong. Let's make it 80% or 100%. I just don't see it boding well for the county, so that's just my 2 cents. Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you. I've been following this way before being on the Queensbury Planning Board with this property and the pushes. You know, I have disagreed with having to go this route and paying him more money, but I think this is a final compromise, and I agree with Supervisor Conover, is that this is some final closure, and down the line, I'm really hoping that, you know, this was a good move for all of us, and we're getting some closure so we can all move on from this. So
I agree. And after what I just said, that doesn't mean that I'm in favor of it. It's distasteful, so to speak, but it's something that we need to
Right.
do, and that's that.
I'll vote.
Anything else? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks for correcting me when I said there were no items. I don't get the most up-to-date information, you know. All right, moving along. Now we'll go back to our airport manager, I believe, Mr. Mapp. Go right ahead.
So last Monday and Tuesday, the airport had its annual Part 139 inspection. It was conducted by 2 safety inspectors from the FAA as well as an FAA engineer. So we had a full squad of FAA personnel touring the airport and inspecting how we run our operation over there.
Sure.
I'm very pleased to say that we passed the majority of our tests. There are 1 or 2 items mostly related to vegetation removal, making sure our lights are clean and such. But there are minor issues in the grand scheme of things in terms of safety and security of the facility. So there are 2 issues that were pointed out to us, which is the vegetation removal along the fence line, and we are in the process of getting that process resolved, as well as the trees to the north of the airport, which we discussed at previous county meetings, if everyone remembers. And then finally, the runway markings that need to be updated that we mentioned since last year. We are in the process, and we actually secured the grant from the FAA. It's roughly about $300,000 for that runway marking. So it was very exciting on my part. I think we discussed it amongst Mr. Hages and Office Supervisor McGowan at the time. The markings are usually not funded by the FAA. It's very low priority. So for the county to secure that project, it kind of saves us a lot of money, $300,000 compared to $30,000. And it's very, in my opinion, incredible achievement in terms of the county. It would have also taken us 5 or 6 years to complete it. Now it's going to take us about a week to get those markings done. So overall, the inspection went very, very well, and I hope it will continue as we proceed.
Very good.
Questions?
Question, Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, I just want to reach out there to Mr. Knapp and just say thank you. That's really a great report. They are small things, but I know the runway markings, we're on top of that one and time and that. I'm a little dissatisfied with the vegetation along our fence. But, you know, you're really doing an excellent job out there, and it's not for a lack of not doing anything. It's just a lot going out there with the size crew you have. So if that's all it is, thank you. That's a great report. Keep up the good work.
Thank you guys for supporting.
Very good. If, you know, going back to our previous discussion, aside from this committee, now might be an appropriate time, if you feel like it, to mention the drone protocol or whatever that's in place, that
Now,
it's
if
a
you're operating
feather in
drones
your
around-
cap, because you're the, what, first in the country, or, but go ahead.
If you're operating drones around the airport, you're generally required to contact the nearest airports. We do not give permission to operate a drone. We normally just notify pilots or notify the aviation community a drone will be operating. I must clarify this. We don't give permission to fly or operate a drone. We just give notification. So it's very important. But it's also important you are coordinate with both the airport as well as not near airport flight services standards. There is a line, a number you can call and have that coordination taken care of on your behalf. And Part 107 operators will be familiar with this process. This is just a general news in case anyone's interested in getting involved in drone operations.
And so you submitted the plan or whatever it was you mentioned to me, and the plan or the, whatever it was you submitted, that you were the first.
Your first point of contact. So we issued a notice to
Right.
airmen or notice to air missions at this point. So we just notified the aviation community that drones will be operating in the area and just keep an eye out, just make sure everyone's operating safely.
Weren't you the first in the country or whatever to submit that?
We are among the first airports within the country. We updated our airport emergency plan. That is unfortunately a sensitive
Okay.
document which I cannot unfortunately discuss, but we are among the first airports within the country to have our updated airport emergency plan approved with reference to drone activity.
I think that's a reflection on you, and congratulations. Yes, Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you. All right, so an understanding of that, I'm a realtor. I have some property. I want to fly a drone just over my acre and a half. I need to contact our airport.
Generally, if you're a Part 107 certified drone operator, so you've actually been going through the process of testing and so on, then you will normally call either the airport or flight services standards. Just notify us that a drone will be operating in the area so we can issue that notice to airmen that a drone is operating in the area and be on the lookout.
Even though we're not gonna even be that high, there's no ceiling cap or anything. It's any drone that goes off the ground
It's up to 500 feet. So anything above
Right.
500 feet.
above 500 feet.
But generally, the drone is so small. If a pilot's flying, it's really hard to pick out the distance. So you still want to notify that you'll be operating a drone in the area, even if you're operating under 500 feet.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been up in the plains where the pilot would say, yeah, you see that plane over there? And
It's a little,
I can't even see that thing. And those things are much bigger than a drone. There's no way you're seeing a drone. But it's anything above 500 feet.
generally, yes, that's a requirement, but I always encourage anyone, as long as you're operating a drone, notify us, notify flight services.
Okay, no, I'm just, because I know this is becoming a big thing for, like realtors or promoting properties or, even campaigning I've seen, so, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So
Superintendent
Supervisor
Hadrian.
McGowan, for the next campaign, are we expecting drones?
I think my mouth makes a big enough presence.
We're moving down, Nexamp.
Sure. Their attempt to get on the agenda for the town of Queensbury, got feedback that they may not be able to make it for July's agenda. They will see, they're waiting back for confirmation at this time.
Thank you. And then Ideal Dairy.
I don't think we have it as a discussion item here.
Yeah, I don't think we have it either as a discussion item. So I can touch base on it real quick.
See, I have things that you don't, you have things that I don't.
I can just touch base on it real quick. So as part of the Ideal Dairy contract, they were to use, and I don't even have the acreage in my head. What was the total? Do you recall?
That your total is 200 acres, but.
About 200 acres of airport property to be used for farming. With Nexamp taking 2 of those lots away, for the solar farm. We have to, based on the contract, I have to write a letter notifying Ideal Dairy that they will be losing. They still have the use of the other parts of the airport, but they'll be losing those two lots. So I will be writing a letter to Ideal Dairy to let them know that they'll be losing. And we've already had the conversation with them offline, but I'll formally submit a letter to them, letting them know that next year we'll be using those probably come next year, based on what we're looking at right now.
Thank you. That's it. We'll move down to referrals or pending items. We have Rich Air T hanger proposal. Environmental issue has been identified with wetlands. Further review required before any action can be taken. Superintendent bring updates committee as they become available. Update. It was noted the design was completed and would be submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers for approval May 24th. Go ahead.
Chairman Bruno, I just want to step back real quick, and I also wanted to point out that this is the first year that Ideal will be providing a revenue to the county. The first couple of years was them to prep the soil, and we were, as part of the contract, they weren't being charged to use the land. So this is the first year that we'll also start collecting revenue from Ideal Dairy as well. As far as the Rich Air T proposal, I understand that Steve Abbott and their engineer have been reaching out to Army Corps to get a meeting out in the field. They just haven't been able to kind of corner the Corps out there yet. So the ball's in their court. We're waiting on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments, questions, etc.? Mr. Lehman, do we have any comments from the public?
Hi, Chairman Bruno. No, there's nothing on YouTube.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that concludes the airport agenda. Thank you, Mr. Mapp. Okay, moving on to buildings and grounds agenda. Under action and business items, we have a request to close reserve funds and transfer the funds to another reserve. Rationale is the closure of 2 reserve funds that have gone unused and transfer the funds to an active fund. Second. Supervisor Conover in the second. Discussion. Supervisor McGowan.
You know, this sounds like a great opportunity to take these funds. I was just in the earlier meetings with criminal justice, and we have the Needham report that we need to start working on, and we have some expenses that I think will be coming up. I would probably ask that our chairman make a recommendation of taking these reserve funds right now and putting them in a future for moving forward to panic buttons for our 3 entrances, future for cameras on all our locked doors, spectrometers for metal detectors, especially for our DMV, which is missing and outdoor. You know, a lot of things that that were on the Needham report that we need to address to secure our facility. There was a big, huge discussion, even went into executive for our building earlier that I was at. So these are the things that I would like to was going to bring up with you and possibly Scott. And Kevin, I'd like to keep Kevin out because that'd be about a 1.5, 2-year report. No, I'm only kidding. But I'm not kidding, but I'm kind of kidding at the same time. But there's something I think that we need to move forward and look into. And since we have these unreserved, is that something that this committee would feel comfortable, and our chairman is presenting is taking that money and maybe setting it aside for it, at least being able to move quickly on, you know, for at least anything, panic buttons that we can have in a central, you know, monitoring system for those panic buttons on our, that and a spectrometer for our DMV.
Okay, why don't you itemize those and submit them?
I just did.
No, I mean formally, other than this. Did anybody get all that?
Do I go through Scott on that? You want to meet and we'll itemize that and put, do I do it or?
If you're making a
or our
request.
Directors.
It'll go through them, but Superintendent Hajos.
First, I just wanted to say to Supervisor McGowan, we're not, the money is actually going into reserve rehab county buildings. So it'll be in for any type of maintenance work that we have to do for county buildings, including rehabilitation. And you can include probably that work into rehabilitation. So the money will be put into that reserve. And then from there, we can take it out to use to whatever we want, whether it's an expense under contract, whether it's expense for material, we can take it out of that reserve to be used on any of that work. I don't necessarily have the Needham report. Do you have the Needham report? Okay, so we can go through and kind of itemize the costs associated with all those, the panic buttons, the magnetometer, I don't necessarily know that. Did Needham provide an estimate with that as well?
No,
They did, so.
No, they didn't.
No, but I can say, sorry,
Yes, Scott.
in regards to panic alarms, you do have panic buttons and you do have cameras on all locked doors currently.
So when I come in this door down here, there's a camera on me.
Yes, there is.
Who monitors those cameras?
Scott, and I think OES has them as well.
All right, the only reason I'm saying is that, with the meeting earlier, we were talking about putting armed officers. At least 2 entrances right now, but for security purposes and to move a little bit quickly, because we have been working on this, is that where's this reserve fund that we didn't use, where's that coming from?
There's two different reserve funds that the treasurer's office had pointed out to me. One of them's A870 reserve equipment and storage and vehicles. That has been around for a while and the money hasn't been used. I think that was done for a facility way back in, I guess I want to say around 2008. And the other one was A72 reserve for bridge replacement and repair, which hasn't done. The treasurer's office has said, hey, why don't you move that to a different reserve, an active one that you're using currently, which would be, we thought it would be best to put it in reserve rehab county buildings, because that's what that money would be used for, is anything to do with county buildings.
Well, you did state equipment, all right, the spectrometer. I mean, basically, I was looking at spectrometers. We need, an outdoor one. And some of the thing I was thinking is, especially on the front, we have 2 doors, all right? And for the DMV. We also have 2 doors for probation. We also have 2 doors. What I was thinking of is to help prevent shooters from entering the building, since you're coming through 2 doors. We have a spectrometer, an outdoor spectrometer that you come through. All right, because I don't think we can get one, and we've kind of looked at that. We have a little bit of an overhang of coming through, but the spectrometer goes off, it locks the inside door from being able to be opened, to give the officers the opportunity, or our security people, to react. And it might be a second or 2, you know what I'm saying? But that's better than, especially if we have an armed person. But it's just to really give access. It's not to prevent people from coming in. It just that's something that I would like to look into, without a full-fledged report of trying understanding. But we could do the same thing to DDS, is that the spectrometer goes off, it locks that inside door. All right, so you can't enter that building, and then you have to reset it. Same with probation. You come in, you hit a spectrometer, but there's another door that enters this building. It's really just to secure the glass areas. Anybody can come through those doors if they want to. All right. All they need is something to break the glass with, but at least they are locked, and we have cameras on them, and we can look into who monitors those a little bit better. But I would like to. Really, what I'd like to be able to move this money so we can secure something and at least get a spectrometer coming from that for the front entrance. All right, without, waiting the 3, 4, 6, 8 a year. We need to kind of move a little bit quickly. The money's here, we're pulling out of reserve. Is that something that we can do? That's all I'm asking.
And I guess the question is, because Scott's, the report from Needham, I didn't think that Needham was recommending, I thought they were still recommending the front entrance to the county center as being their secure
It's locked.
entrance. I'm not saying it's locked. I thought in their report, they said something about switching to the front entrance. So I don't know. I understand, McGowan, you don't want that one necessarily, but who's making the decision whether it should be there or there?
That's why it's an outdoor, we can use it, but right now, that one's locked. We don't need one there. I mean, it's pretty common sense to me. So
I'm not
that's the
saying-
main entrance that's used by 90% of the people that enter this building. Supervisors come in that way, DMV records, and the treasurer's office. Probably over 90% of the people use that. So to me, it makes sense to put one there now. Like I said, I'm not trying to make a long process out of this, but we've been trying to work on this and we've been trying to get somewhere. And after hearing today, we have to make a decision. And I have already talked to our chairman and, he's on an alliance with pushing this as quickly as we can. So that's all I'm trying to do. And if I'm wrong from my respected chair members here that have been here longer than me in the process, but trying to secure this building, we can at least start with at least a warning light that, hey, we got trouble coming in. That we already have in 2 entrances, but we're missing it in one main one.
Superintendent Hajols.
And again, I think it is Supervisor McGowan, a common sense approach. I agree with you. Am I to be the one to make the decision that we're not, based on Needham's report, using the front entrance and making that the secure entrance, and we're going to use DMV, because now everybody comes in through DMV area. That's going to delay time to getting into DMV now. And I'm asking the question because I don't think a decision's been made on Needham's report. Needham's report said the front entrance should be the secure entrance that we're using. I understand you want to use the DMV entrance, and I don't think that that's a bad idea, but do we want everybody coming in DMV now? And I wasn't part of the conversation earlier, coming through a magnetometer at DMV. I don't, am I to make that decision?
No, I mean, to me, right now, that's the door that's used, so let's protect it. That door is not being used, so it's a common sense. So I don't know if I'm privy to make this decision, but to me, it's the most common sense decision. And I think we should move forward on that particular entrance right now. Why Needham says that door has been locked for ever since we locked it. I don't know how long it's been locked. And one, it's not handicapped accessible. All right. There's no parking. Now we're talking about redoing the parking and putting out some green space and redoing that front one and making it so that's going to be the main entrance. So if I'm wrong, I mean, I'm going to respect everyone here, but
Okay, let me just, so,
I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill.
okay, just a minute. Was this proposed or referred from the previous committee?
Come to county facilities
What's that?
from criminal justice.
Criminal justice. So they're making a formal proposal or request of this committee?
To make some decisions. Yes. That's what I got.
Well, then I
Frank,
think
you were
we have
here.
to wait for that.
Kind of referral.
A referral that it would come to that we could discuss this and get it going.
Referral from the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee to county facilities to discuss the idea of magnetometers for the municipal.
Today.
It would be on your next agenda. I would
Well, that's
assume,
where I'm
but
going.
nothing prevents you from talking about
Well,
it.
I'm just trying to get the ball rolling because that's another 30 days. And then from there, we got to make a decision. Then we have to wait for so as it is with, and a lot of you missed this with, we have for the sheriff, for the approval, which I think failed, it's gonna take until September if we are able to get a vote today to get trained officers, at least at two of the doors for armed officers.
Okay,
Along
well, I
with
think we
a-
need to know specifically what's being proposed. That's my point. I just don't want to throw something out there and we say, oh, okay, one way or the other, yay or nay. We need specifics.
All right, so if you want Pacifics, I'll give you two Pacifics. We have Micrometer at DSS. I don't know why I always say that's dentist, isn't it? That's a dentist. That's probably why. And then we have a micrometer and probation. But 90% of the people that come in and out of this,
I know. we've
County
been through
building.
that.
no, I know, but the majority of the people, and we don't have one there.
Yeah.
So to me, I would like to see, we get something in the works, to get something there for forewarning as a step. If we already have panic buttons, where the panic button, we need a plan of what happens if the panic button goes off.
Yeah.
You know, where's it go? Where's it ring? I don't know any of that.
There is a plan. And there's the reason that the panic buttons are only known by the people that have access to them. Because we don't want the general public to know exactly where they are within the building. But
Understood.
there are panic buttons in places that need to be.
Okay.
And they go either to Mahoney Notifier and or the sheriff, or both in most cases.
Well, let's put on both, because we've also talked about a mobile app of going out there for emergency services that was brought up in OES. So, but
All right.
you know this, I'm not privy to this, you know what I'm saying? I don't care to know where the panic buttons are. All right, I just want to know what is the process that we're notified and who gets notified and what happens if the panic button goes off.
All right, excuse me. We have a motion on the floor. Supervisor Conover, did you have some comment?
I was just gonna say, like everyone these days, I should. But unfortunately, I think that, there are gonna be different options, different cost structures. There are gonna have to be some meetings with the sheriff and law enforcement and others. I really don't see any option at this stage but to create a process within the building and grounds department and just to the extent possible, you're gonna have, may want to look at other buildings, municipal buildings, how they've done, how they're doing it. Questions like if you had a micrometer, you have to have the personnel because you don't want traffic backed up out on the street waiting to come through micrometers. So there's a lot of questions here and possible issues. I think we need to put a hurry up on this, and if we could, and then maybe there's a sequence that you do step one now, and then step two follows with a little more research in 6 months, which is I think where Brad's going with this. What can we do now? What can we do quickly to elevate the security, not only for people in the building, but the people that visit this building?
Okay, I want to, first of all, I want to take care of the motion on the floor. Then we'll discuss where we go with these augmentation of security. So just discussing the motion on the floor regards the transfer of funds.
You're pulling it to reserves and transferring. them
Right.
funds to a third.
So that motion is on the floor. Any further discussion regarding that motion? Supervisor Thomas.
How much is in that rehab reserve?
You mean in the building rehab reserve? That total I don't have, but right now we're transferring about $9,000.
Okay.
But I will, if
I'll find it. Well, we have 75, 66, 35 and 1,483.93. It's right there.
almost $9,000.
Right.
That's not the whole reserve rehab account, though. There's other money in that reserve. I just don't have that number in front of me. What we're putting in that reserve right now is about $9,000.
So
There's other funding.
can
in
we,
that
can
reserve.
we amend transferring that to a specific fund for the security of the building?
Superintendent Hagos.
I'm not understanding why Supervisor McGowan, you'd want to do that. The money's not going anywhere. We can take the money out of that and use it for any type of rehab that we're gonna do. It's a reserve account for county buildings. So I don't have, otherwise we have to go back through committee and set up a capital project for security.
All right,
So I think if we put it in this account, it's a perfectly legit spot to put it because it's for rehab of the buildings.
I'm fine with that, as long as, I mean, our chairman just re-entered it. I know that we have talked about it earlier this morning. That's up to the chairman.
Chairman Garrity.
Yes, as long as, real quick, as long as we can use this to do the security upgrades that Brad's been talking about with that's legit to come out of this account.
Yes.
I wouldn't see no problem with putting it in as long as you do the security. We're talking about security.
Earmarking it, yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Let's go through the discussion items. Work order request program, fleet car request program, and a countryside adult home, an update on that.
The work order request program is currently at 2,161 requests since its inception and working smoothly. Actually working rather quickly, so it's very well. The fleet car request form is at 605 since its inception and working very well. People are getting very accustomed to it. Actually, on a daily basis, every car is going out the door, so.
Good.
Supervisor.
Sorry.
So for Countryside, and I'm actually going to do Countryside and a couple other projects, if the chairman will allow me.
Absolutely.
I'd like to start off first with the Mosier property abatement and demolition in Johnsburg. All the abatement work is completed. The demolition is underway. They will most likely be done by Thursday of this week. And there's no savings necessarily in the contractor's bid because that was a lump sum, but I believe there will be a fair amount of savings in Atlantic Testing's time that they spent out in the field on that project. So they're just about wrapped up. They're finishing some of the foundation work and some of the other debris on site, and they'll be done as of Thursday.
That's great.
Countryside adult home. Detailed design is being finalized. The contract documents will be ready for bid the first week of August. And contracts should be awarded based on the bids in the beginning of September or as soon as possible after the bids come in. I can tell you with some of the changes that came back to us from Countryside and the staff during some of the project meetings, there will be, based on the numbers that we're seeing right now in bids, there probably will be a cost increase to that project. But I don't know the numbers and I don't want to give you anything until the bids come in and we can see what happens. The bids may prove me wrong.
Yep.
But we'll wait to see when the bids come in.
That it?
That's it.
But it won't be as
Thank you.
bad as the bridge at the second one.
Now, since we're discussing things, it would be appropriate, I guess, to continue discussion on the Supervisor Conover.
No, I was just looking to eventually comment on the drawings on the parking lot.
Oh, okay, we'll get, I think that's down here, but I just want to kind of close out what we got into. We were talking about transfer of funds. So does the committee have any desire, one or another, to refer this anywhere regarding security, the augmentation, if you will, or supplementation of existing security with the implementation of magnetometers, panic buttons, et cetera, as was discussed?
I don't know that we need anything specifically other than just to ask our building grounds folks and Public Works to put all of this on the fast track. And be interesting to know what security measures are being applied elsewhere. Not that that necessarily has to be our guide, but that reinforce where Supervisor McGowan was going is, and those things that we can move on quickly, we should move on quickly. And those things that have to come a little later, well, then they have to come a little later. I mean, these buildings, this building in particular was not designed for, what we're discussing today. That's a primary design element, this building. So, I mean, I think that there's a sequencing here, and a cost structure as well, but I think we all share the same goal that being highlighted here today, that, we need to do what we can do.
Kind of formalize that a little. We're requesting Buildings and Grounds to look into the implementation of some of these additional security measures. Chairman Garrity. Okay, so it's in accordance with that. What report is that?
The Needham
Needham,
report.
okay.
Workplace violence assessment. That's
Oh, okay. Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Garrity, you weren't in the building earlier, and Superintendent Hagels brought this up. In the Needham's report, it mentioned the front of the building, the front entrance, I believe. And to me, since that's been locked down for years, and we really don't plan on opening it, and it's not really handicap accessible for the amount of people coming in, I just immediately thought that the DMV entrance, where we have county, DMV, and treasurer's office, where the majority of the people come in anyways, was the one that needed to be protected. So that I thought that we could do, and at least if we can move forward because we do have an overhang over there. I have been out with Superintendent Hagels to just look at, if we can get a bank so nobody can go around it, they have to go through some point of thing, an outdoor, where at least it gives a warning light on the inside that we have someone that's coming in. You know what I'm saying? It's that split second that we need, that would help anyone as we move forward into protecting our doors, because we do have them, we have it in our court systems, but we have armed state police there. So, just the presence of a gun, I think, would deter a lot of people, but we don't have that. But we have it in probation, and like I said, and we have it over at DSS. So, it's just a simple little thing, but it's a walkthrough. And right now, if we look into something that's temporary, I've given a lot of thought on this, and I've looked at different things. But we get an outdoor one as we move forward, and maybe redesigning the front entrance to make it a little bit more adaptable to like what we have on the other side of the parking lot. But as I said, when this building was built in '58, nobody thought about that. Everybody used to be able to come to the county with their rifles still in the back of the truck, and they didn't worry about locking their vehicles. But nowadays, we used to have that at school. I mean, we never thought about it. And
All
now you can't,
I want
so.
to move this along. So you'll look into that. Any other comments? Supervisor Thomas.
I hear a lot about this Needham report. I'd like to see it.
Makes two of us. So we'd like to get the Needham report to.
I'll make sure it gets to the entire committee and to the board for that matter.
Very good. Appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else?
As part of the referral that came from the previous, was there coordination with sheriff's department, buildings and grounds? Because what you're discussing here, the magnetometer, and everything along those lines, you're gonna need extra people in regards to that. So, I mean, just give you an example of the state court right now, magnetometer, you're looking at a Rapsicon, then you're looking at Smith's detection, you're looking at least 4 people that all have guns and are armed at all times.
Right now, it's just a warning system to move forward. We're working.
And my first utmost thing is the security of this building and security of the people that are within it. I don't disagree with you by any means. I'm just giving you exactly, you know, you're gonna have to be looking at different points of contacts, metal, what you're actually looking at. You want a 19 point, you want a 9 point, you want a 26 point. Are you scanning bags as you're coming through? There's a lot of different things just to give you an idea of what we're gonna be looking at.
Okay, I've been informed that regarding staffing of this, that's a referral or pending item in criminal justice, so
Okay.
we don't necessarily need to get into that now.
Points, yes.
26
Yeah.
points.
Oh, no, the points of detections, I did notice that, and it varies in prices on them.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's move along to these referral pending items on the agenda here. And I'll let Superintendent Ajos proceed with those if he would like to.
Sure, thank you. So the first one on there is design for updates for the front entrance. We have, I guess I want to say 5 iterations here. So the first one is just showing what the existing conditions are now. The second was showing just the green space around the front entrance in the Supreme Court area. The third showed the rework of the front parking lot. That was eliminating the victims memorial that's out front and moving it someplace different. But since we had Supervisor Seaver ask the question, maybe we could keep it in the same place so that it wouldn't be kind of directly in front of the county center. We went back to the 5th option, which shortened that parking lot, leave the memorial garden there, and added more green space. So that's the final one that we have now that everybody has. Although speaking on this discussion, if something ever does come back out for the front entrance of the county center, we've now removed that kind of ring road out of there, but we also have parking spaces up next to the sidewalk where individuals would be able to come in on handicap ramps from the parking lot to the sidewalk, and then we'd still have to look at kind of handicap accessibility at the front entrance if something was to come about in the future.
Thank you. Supervisor Conover.
First, apologies for not commenting sooner on this. Me, design follows function. And right now, the downside of the building is the main entrance. And it just seems to me that if that's going to remain a main entrance, I don't see how it could not be given a level of activity that services. It would seem to me that what you really need to be looking at, I think, is, and I'll just show you, if right now you've got, I'll call it these areas here, see them, 1 and 2, here, 1 and 2, that what you would do is, and also, if this is the main entrance, and we know this is the main entrance to this building, that what you would want to do is you would want to create another quadrant here to service this primarily, but also within walking distance to service this. And if it were me, what I would be looking at is this area down in here. This area down in here, I'll call it west of the existing social service building parking. And I would be looking at that as another area. And I would try to incorporate this parking so that it works with this other parking, so people don't have to go back out to the access road. In other words, what you don't want is you want somebody who pulls in here and then can't find parking here and is forced out to the access road to go into this one. What you want is you want your circulation to be able to do that. Bank to bank to bank. And the only other comment besides this area here, I'm sure Chairman, I'm talking about this area here,
Right.
is in this area here,
Yep.
is the area to the east of the existing parking may offer an opportunity, if it were narrowed just a tad, for another bank of parking right over in here. Right over in here. And nothing prevents, just in terms of green space, nothing prevents all of this from being lined with whatever you want to line it with. I mean, right now, off of the highway, we have an abundance of green space. It's all very nice, appropriately so. It's a very nice setting. And I think that when we do our design, we need to maybe think about that. But I don't know, Kevin, you see what I'm saying here? That this area over in here, that it would, then these three areas would service this main entrance and would also be there to help with the traffic, pedestrian traffic here as well. And the reason I put this bank or down in here is because, to the extent possible, you don't want people crossing the access road if it can be helped. And now I say all of this not fully knowing underground situation, underground utilities, underground structures, you know, but just in terms of circulation, I think that. And then what you do over in here, it would seem to me, if this is going to be a limited access off the east elevation of the building, then really what you're saying here is that this is primarily for courts and for our employee parking for the community center, this building, and the legislators that show up, right? Because even when we hold a public meeting right now, they're here. Yeah. So I think that getting down the function of the program will help drive the design on this. And I heard some discussion today about possibly adjusting that access to maybe be other than what it is. And the moment you do that, then everything changes. I mean, everything changes. And so, but it may be that this parking, to expand the social services parking, and this parking in this corner to expand the parking on this side, it's not, would factor in regardless. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, those are my comments. Take them for what.
Supervisor McGowan.
Kevin, thank you. I know we've talked about this. I do like that one the best. Shrinking down that parking lot, bringing in more green spots. I like what Supervisor Conover says, but right now I'm not worried about DDS or DSS because I think we got ample enough parking for them right now, front, in, and back, and on the sides. But for right now, to concentrate on ours, but Supervisor Connor did bring up a good point. I hate to touch any of the green space over on this side, but, and he's right of being able, if you can't find parking, which has happened a few times here for my particular vehicle. If I had a little e-car, probably I could have snuck in somewhere, but you know, sometimes I need a little bit more. But coming back on the access road to come in there, but we also can expand this green space here in with this parking lot, all right? And have our access road that if you come in from this way. So if you can't find this parking spot here, we have a spot open where you can go into that and keep this green. I'd like to keep as much green as I can, because once you turn into the parking lot, it's tough to go back to green. So if we keep as much green as we can, put in our parking lot and see how it works. And if we have to expand and we need it over there at DSS, then that's a particular area. But for right now, I think we concentrate here. And like I said, with that walkway from this parking lot straight across into our main building, I think that, so out of all the designs, I like the green space Sorry, were you able to see what I'm trying to? But I like that area, not having to go back, because that access road is busy. There's a lot of cars that come in and out, and it is kind of a loop road around our whole building, so. But I like this idea, and I always say that in Queensbury on the planning, let's shrink down some more parking lots, and a lot of times, like I said, when I go into a place and the parking lot's completely packed, chances are I'm gonna pull out anyways, because I know that they don't have enough help inside, and I'll be waiting forever. So I'll come back when the parking lot's a little bit emptier, Not saying that that's what we should do at the county, but opening that and tying, being able to get a few more handicaps or whatever, or an access and get off at that main road, something just to look at.
Superintendent Hagos.
I don't want to drag it out. I want to make it real quick. Thank you, both you and Ron, for the suggestions. One of the reasons that, and Ron, we did look at to some degree with functionality, because one of the things that we were having conflicts with that ring road, not the ring road for the county center, but the ring road out in front of the county center, was the conflicts with traffic coming in and out, because they were coming out of both sections of that small ring road, as well as coming from either direction. So that's kind of how we blocked that off and just had said, hey, you got to come around the ring road to get in this parking lot. I do, and I think it's probably a good idea. We probably gained about 20 spots with this smaller than what we have existing out there today. And if we do create this kind of pass through to the DMV parking lot to access that parking lot, then we'll lose a couple over there. But in the end, I think we'll still come out ahead with parking in that area. As far as going to the DSSIs, that's fine, but that's where the gazebo is and everything on that side. So I try to limit as much as we do on that side. Plus, that part of it is right on the corner of that ring road, the main ring road, and that'd be probably a difficult area with all the people coming out of DSS and DMV in any spot they can. It's fully accessible and it's not curved off. Then to put another access point over there, that I would probably eliminate doing, because it's also right on that sharp corner. As far as the back, it's either way. I think we probably could squeak out on the backside of DMV one more bank of parking along there. But again, that eliminates more green space on that side. And that's typically the walking path where they come in the back of the building on that side, they come down through that area. So, but I'll definitely put that access road in, and I'll lay out the other ones to see how it looks. And then before next committee, I will actually hand it out to everybody ahead of time so they can all see it, make comments on it, and then we can maybe finalize it next committee meeting.
That's Supervisor Conlon.
Yeah, I think regardless of the design, right now what you're showing is a new access lane off the ring road to this parking area. It's not integrated with the other parking on the south side of the building. So it seemed to me and that may be by design, right? And, if you're going to the building for this, don't park here. I don't know. But it seemed to me that if you can utilize your existing access cut, then you don't need that access cut, and you gain that space and you gain that parking. Because every cut you have that's going into a parking lot requires utilization of space, and there's costs associated with that as well. Now you got every curb cut, you got to have the lane in, you got in and out, you've got signage, you got all of that. So if you were to integrate all of that together, then once you access the parking area on the south side of the building, you can circulate throughout all three areas without ever going out to the access road.
Right.
To get in other areas of the parking. You see what I'm saying? In other words, it gives you that flexibility. If you can do that, if the function is addressing.
Right. And
Yes, Superintendent Hagos.
And just the last thing, and as I was talking about that from the Needham report, they talked about, using the front entrance and opening that back up again as a secure area. That's the other reason for adding a couple of more parking spots out here, because if we do go back in the future, not saying we do or won't, Supervisor McGowan doesn't want to, but if it does ever come to a head that we're going to use that front entrance again, this is why we provided it, because we didn't want the conflict with the vehicles out here. And this provides all those parking so that if somebody does come in, they can come up the sidewalk there. And then the only thing that we would need at the main entrance would be a handicap ramp. again, maybe in the future if that comes about.
Yes. Supervisor Conley.
That's where the building itself doesn't always lend itself to those kind of decisions because the elevators are on this side of the building. So you access the main entryway. If you're going to the second floor, you have to traverse the entire building to get to the elevators. If the building had originally been designed, that being the main entrance, you would do that. So you know, there are those kinds of considerations when we're talking about, adjusting things. But in the end, certain priorities take precedent and other things that happen as we might ideally like, but they are.
Okay. So the discussion, and we'll await some modifications to, what is it, figure 5 that we're looking at. It's gonna get,
So I just add, I'll add that for next committee meeting is I'll make some of those adjustments. I'll look at the circulation and I'll present it ahead of time to the committee so then we can talk about it next committee meeting.
very good. Thank you. Superintendent Akins. I think we can move down to the update on the abatement of asbestos.
So I have gotten the estimate from Clark Patterson for the abatement and the jail demo. Currently, and this is, we did add a contingency in there, not knowing where prices would fall out, but currently we're at 495,000. That would include the abatement of all the asbestos within the facility. It would also take care of the abatement in the crawl space. And that is either going to be a controlled low strength material or the EDPM kind of fabric that they're going to put down. So those as well as the demo of the interior of the building, leaving a shell would be approximately $495,000. The only thing that would remain that would have any asbestos in that building would be the windows, because there's no sense in us pulling out windows, and it's the caulking in around the windows that still has that asbestos. No sense pulling out the windows until we know what we're going to do with the space. And I want to keep it at least, from moisture and anything else from getting in there. So that about 495,000 approximately would leave us an empty shell to be used for whatever purpose. With that being said, they expect to have final plans to us on July 6th to go out to bid. We will have bids out in July and have a dollar figure. This again is an engineer's estimate. We'll have probably a dollar figure for the August committee meeting to decide whether or not we're going to move forward with whatever plans it may be for the jail.
Yes, Supervisor McGowan.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Kevin, this is good. On the windows and the caulks, the caulking on the windows, we could seal that, correct? It doesn't have to be removed unless we remove the windows, but if we keep the windows for right now,
We're not touching it.
we could paint them and seal them.
You can.
Yeah.
I'm just not, again, until we decide what's going to take place in the facility, we don't even have to necessarily touch it for now. We can just leave them until we decide what's going to go on, because I'm assuming when we do go to do a plan of what's going to happen inside that jail space, whether it be the regional morgue,
Yeah.
office space, storage,
We'll have
whatever it may
windows
be,
to cut
we
it.
would most likely, because of those, you remember, those are those tinted, or not the tinted,
Frosted.
frosted glass,
Yeah.
which you most likely would not leave.
They're not energy efficient.
And they're not, they're absolutely not.
No, I mean, but right now, this is not gonna stop us
No,
from,
absolutely not. They'll just remain in place and we won't touch them.
I mean, if it becomes a hazard for someone that's concerned that they're there, we can always just seal them. And it's just a process. Right now, we just have to put a coat of paint over them.
Yeah, but at this point, we're just gonna leave them in place and not touch the windows whatsoever.
All right.
No.
Could I know you sent me that report, but on my iPad, it's just too teeny to read.
Get your
Can
hard
I get a
copy.
hard copy,
Yes.
please, just so I can, but I really appreciate, I know it's been a long haul, and I've ridden you pretty hard, and I'm really happy that it's coming to fruition. Thank you.
Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, two things. One, I think that's a smart move, because if we remove the windows, we'd only be boarding it out, and we don't want to board it out. So basically, it's, makes sense to leave them for now, so you know what your program is, so you know exactly what kind of windows you want to replace them with, and then you move. It becomes part of the, that element, when you move on that element, as opposed to.
Becomes part of the whole
moving them down,
project.
it's gonna have plywood. It's unnecessary, really. So that's number one. I think number two, I think that our budget officer, treasurer, administrator, chairman should begin to think about, it's not today, but begin to think about, okay, we're gonna need $500,000 or $600,000, where's it coming from? So that when we have the bids, we're able to make that recommendation up front and not have to refer it to them. Start thinking about it now, and they may have some ideas that there are different options, but that's it. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I would just add that doing this work to the old jail building, we've been talking about a regional morgue. And I think parallel with looking for funding, we should get a handle on, it's my understanding, and take this with a grain of salt, that this regional morgue could and would be an income producing endeavor for the county. So while we're looking at funding, somebody ought to look at the viability of that, if in fact it is a revenue generator, and maybe to what degree, because that, correct me if I'm wrong, would have some bearing on, maybe have some bearing on where the funding comes from. In other words, if you're going to be able to spend 500,000 to make 600,000 or 700,000, that type of rationale. So I think someone, and I'm not sure who that someone is, if it, not necessarily this committee, maybe finance, or I don't know. But do you get what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
look,
Frank.
it's, I think maybe past time, we should get our planning office looking at this in terms of CFA round coming up. It may be a little bit too quick for that particular round, but that perhaps there's
Down the road.
something down the road that we should be plugged into and be aware of. But once the building's remediated, then the question becomes, okay, what is the project cost to do something like this? That would be the next step, and it's going to take some time, but what's the project cost for doing this? And what's the business plan for getting it done? And if it may be possible to set it up as some type of enterprise fund, as you suggest, and or some other idea that's out there. But I think that the next step would be, okay, now, does this idea, this concept have legs? What's the cost? Who's prepared to sign in on it? What partners are there out there, including state of New York? I would assume good partners, especially the capital side, the capital cost side, and then, as you say, perhaps the income could help pay for the operating, pay for the capital and the
Sure.
operating, but at least on the operating side. So I think that let's get the building cleaned up. Let's begin to move the idea forward. It's very difficult to move something to a project when you've got these environmental issues. Once the environmental issues are addressed, now we can take a breath. We can, no pun intended, we can begin to focus on what this project cost might be, and who our partners might be.
Right, I agree, but I think that you should move somewhat parallel with this with what the use will be, the end use of this, and what the costs are associated with that. When I said the 500,000 to make 700, you know, 500,000, that, yeah, 500,000 to remediate the building, but then you've got the costs associated with fit up of the building to suit whatever purpose we determine is good for it. So those things all need to be looked at. But my point here is we should proceed with some haste in this because, again, at least look into the viability of a regional morgue. Because again, my understanding, talking with county coroners and their contacts with the pathologists, et cetera, that there is a big need. And before someone else, because I'm sure it's being thought of elsewhere, before someone else jumps on it, we should have our facts and figures together. So I'll end that for me right there. Yes, Supervisor Conlon.
Well, in that, I mean, whether we do it today or not, I mean, it would seem to me that we would want to, we're going to need some assistance in putting together those standards and those evaluations and those budgets associated with activity. And, you know, it would seem to me at some point in time, we're going to have to appropriate some modest amount of resource to bring on those professional services to assist us in that regard. And so I guess I would ask Mr. Chairman that perhaps staff could be instructed to begin that process.
Absolutely.
Okay, who are we going to need? Do we have them presently on board on one of our consulting contracts? And what would be the cost for them to perform a scope of work of X, Y, Z? And how soon can they get it to us? That would be good to see that.
Superintendent Helios.
I was just gonna say, so you're all aware, we do have 5 engineering firms on staff on term agreement, so I can reach out and provide them with a scope of work and then and I'll send it to all 5, and then we'll get kind of a schedule and a feedback from them as what it would take to kind of evaluate that for that facility and design. And I will make it a priority so that it doesn't take long.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Any
I'll
other-
Call you again.
Question here? If not, we'll move down to the work on the Joseph Warren Center.
So we recently had a full meeting with the House kind of design committee as well as the historical committee on the Joseph Warren Center. They had a lot of comments on the plans that were presented by Labella. I believe as of now, and I can let Supervisor Thomas speak to, I believe John Strow and I apologize that I don't know the other Johns. They were going to work up a new design on that plan to prevent or to provide it to Labella so we can get a kind of a final estimate on it. So I believe that's being worked on now. Supervisor Bruno and I talked out there in the hallway. I believe that was supposed to be around the week of July 6th. That's where we are now. So we're just waiting for that markup plan to come back and that we can get it to Labella so they can review it.
Very good. Thank you. This last item, discussion to continue regarding updates to the boardroom. If there are no objections, I'm going to take that off for now. This is not a priority. The boardroom, while it probably could use some updates, it's not a priority now. We've got plenty of other things that demand our attention. So we'll put this on hold if there are no objections until some future date. When that is, I don't know, but it'll be months from now anyway. Is that okay?
Cool with that.
Yes, Supervisor McDowell.
But I do have a question to ask. We do have a repertoire of stuff in this building. But I find it very helpful. One of the things I miss in not being in the boardroom now that the committees are back here, and when I'm not sitting on a committee and I'm here, is being a little bit more comfortable and laying my stuff out. And sitting in these chairs is awful. I like sitting there, but I always can't get, do we have a couple more of those that we can put over here on this side to give an option where people can sit and lay out their paperwork? Do we have any of them stuffed in a corner somewhere that we can dig up?
I don't know that we do, but I will certainly look around, or have Scott and his crew look around to see if we have it. You know, a lot of that was cleaned up over the last couple of years, because it was getting mold on it.
Mhm.
So we cleaned a lot of that up, but we can definitely check to see if we can fit some more.
And I don't think they need to be as elaborate as that if you don't have them. I
No.
mean, long folding tables would probably suffice. I'm just. trying to
Maybe
get
that's a
here.
better option, a folding table, yeah, so we can remove it if we don't need it, but I just find it a little bit more comfortable to be able to sit and relax with my coffee down, but I've never enjoyed sitting in these chairs over here, and like I said, I do like to sprawl at my paperwork, have my coffee, have my phone, the latest crossword puzzle and a Sudoku, at the same time. One of my glasses.
Yes,
We'll definitely look for some of those as Supervisor Seabrook, she had suggested at a previous meeting. The only situation that you're gonna have is if you put a table of any width in through here, ADA compliance. For anybody that wants to come to this table and or sit at the table in the back, then you're talking ADA compliance, which you gotta have your spin around, as you know, from your construction background.
Yes, and well, we always, this is all movable, we could slide this forward and move that over too. I got it all planned out. When I
Okay.
sit here and doodle on my picture on my table, I got it all laid out.
Okay, because I measured it out, and then if you put anything of that width in here, then you lose your ADA compliance.
okay. So we'll look into, yes.
Yeah, I'll definitely look and see what we have downstairs. I don't think we
Supervisor
have too
Seaver?
many things right now. Let's left over.
I just, so the microphone was here. Oh, no, that's good. Supervisor, or Mr. Chairman, you just brought up a really important point about the ADA compliance. This is something for years we've talked about, updating the ADA report so that the entire county is in compliance with those guidelines. Recently, I know we had some discussions about the elevator, and last year we did get it working, but I would like to know that the elevator is accessible to anyone at any time in the county. But is there a way that we could just dust off that old ADA report and take a look at it so we could start making some improvements on it?
Yes, Superintendent Hazel.
Supervisor Seaver, I'm working on it right now.
Yes,
Currently.
good.
There's a lot of updating, and we have to report on the ADA requirements, and I'm currently working on that right now. Amy Clue had brought me the report. I sat down and talked with her and Ryan about it, and I'm gonna go through, because there were some recommendations in there. So we're gonna start some of it was the panic bars, how much of a force you had to put on them and such. So we're going through that right now. But it's ADA compliant throughout the entire county center, so we're working on it right now.
Thanks. I know NISAC did have some great best practices and different ways to do that. And ARPA, when we've had trainings on ARPA at NACO and NISAC, they've also talked about some availability of funding to be able to help with some of those things. So while that window is still open for ARPA dollars, that might be an area that I know they view that as an allowable expense. But I'm glad to hear that's on the radar, but if we could get it updated, that's awesome.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, unless there's anything else, I'll check. Oh, Superintendent Hagos.
I just have one last thing. I was doing updates on construction projects. The last one I had to update you on is, as you recall, there's still one final phase of the court, part of this front entrance, but that was to update some of the handicap accessibility within the court areas. So that plans are about 60% complete now. That's phase 4 of the project, and construction contracts will probably be advertised October, November for that final phase of the court.
Thank you. Else? No. Mr. Lehman, do we have anyone from the public? Here's a comment.
Hi, Chairman Bruder. No, there's nothing, no comments on YouTube.
Thank you very much. That being said, entertain a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Conover, second by Supervisor McGowan, all in favor?